Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Americans and money, that is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. There is no question that economic issues will be foremost in the upcoming presidential election. That's why Hillary Clinton's decision not to debate Bernie Sanders on Fox News is a major mistake for her. Sanders, as you know, wants to blow up capitalism, says it's a corrupt system. The Vermont senator admires socialism, whereby the government calls the shots in the private marketplace. A debate with Sanders on Fox News would give Secretary Clinton a major opportunity to smash that theory, to stick up for capitalism and perhaps persuade some voters she is not an ardent leftist. But again, Mrs. Clinton has refused the debate, even though she said this back in 2008.
Honestly, I just believe that this is the most important job in the world. It's the toughest job in the world. You should be willing to campaign for every vote. You should be willing to debate anytime, anywhere.
Now on to you. A new poll by the Associated Press says that two-thirds of American adults, two-thirds, would have difficulty coming up with money to cover a $1,000 emergency expense. 75% of Americans making less than $50,000 a year say that I had trouble with that. 67% of those making between $50,000 and $100,000 a year say the same thing. Even for the country's wealthiest citizens, households making more than $100,000 a year, 38% say they'd have difficulty coming up with $1,000 to pay an emergency expense. That's just stunning. And it all goes back to the change, the big change, in how Americans view money. In 1965, the poverty rate in the USA was 17%. 2014, nearly 50 years later, poverty rate 15%. Obviously not a big improvement, but here's the key stat. 50 years ago, personal disposable income, that is money you have on hand to spend, in your wallet, in your purse to spend, was just $14,000. In 2015, it was $38,000 per year, a vast improvement in spending power. The problem is we spend it all. We don't save. We're not frugal. We want immediate gratification. Now, for those viewers who understand American culture, the studies are not shocking. My parents were children when the Great Depression hit, and that scared the heck out of them, as my grandparents had to struggle to put food on the table. The Depression kids carried on a tradition that money was never to be wasted. Then World War II hit, and millions of Americans were forced to fight for their lives. The suffering was tremendous, but our military prevailed, and most civilians did what they could to help the military. They weren't thinking that much about making money. There was a greater cause. Now, I grew up in Levittown, New York, a suburb 25 miles east of New York City. The housing in Levittown was cheap, especially to vets who got low-cost mortgages. Very few of us in the neighborhood had anything. It was very working class. In my house, we ate fish sticks, tuna, hot dogs, SpaghettiOs. Remember SpaghettiOs? My parents never had a new car. Our house did not have air conditioning. It was like India there in August. Now, that kind of upbringing meant that all financial transactions were scrutinized. No appetizers when we went to Savini's, the local Italian restaurant. And college was out of reach for many of my friends. But my father saved so my sister and I could go. Money was never to be wasted, ever. That value system is deeply rooted in me. I do not waste money. I'd rather give it to charity. I don't want a plate from Cape Cod. I don't want a Bentley. I don't want very much on the material side at all. But I realize that most Americans are different. They want stuff, especially younger Americans. And many of them feel they're entitled to stuff. They should be provided with stuff, with everything they desire. A recent study by Harvard University says 51% of young Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 do not support capitalism. Just 42% of the youngins buy into the system we have had here since 1776. And in a Gallup poll, 35% of Americans now have a positive view of socialism. 60% say capitalism is the way to go. Talking Point submits to you that those who want socialism have no blanking idea what that system really means. Bernie Sanders likes to point to Sweden, a nation of 9 million people, most of whom look exactly the same. It's easy for the Swedish government to provide cradle-to-grave entitlements while taking the majority of what people earn there to support the system. But here in America, that would lead to disaster. We're simply too big a country to be told what we can earn, what we can do with what we have. In China, which has nearly 1.5 billion citizens, they have to impose communism and socialism. You go to prison or worse if you defy the government mandate. And to keep the educated population in check, the Chinese government now allows capitalism in places like Shanghai and Hong Kong. It goes against the very nature of most people to tell them how to live their lives. Some Americans freely choose to serve the public by teaching, in law enforcement, or in local politics. That's a good thing, but you're not going to get wealthy there. It's also a good thing to use your talents to expand your income. That's what I did. At one point, my father encouraged me to join the Teamsters Union. I did not take his advice, preferring to go to college, then study abroad, then go to grad school. But I paid for most of that myself by painting houses, driving a cab, teaching swimming. Nobody gave me anything, nor did I seek it. The harder I worked, the more money I made. And I saved a lot of that money so I could invest and build wealth. Are you hearing that, Bernie Sanders? Are you hearing that? So capitalism certainly worked for me, and I don't want Sanders or anybody else taking more than half of my earnings to use for dubious social experiments and handouts to those who are not in need, who are layabouts. Right now, about half of my income is paid in taxes. Okay, no beef. This country's been good to me. But no more than 50%. That's it. And I don't want to live in a socialist nation. Summing up, Hillary Clinton had a huge opportunity to reinforce that capitalism has made America the most prosperous nation on earth, giving opportunity to billions of people over the years who are willing to work hard. But the secretary is soft on capitalism, even though she's taken huge advantage of it herself. As for regular folks, we all should wise up and practice financial responsibility. We don't need half the stuff we buy. So save, then invest conservatively, and build some protection for yourself. The cold truth is that American politicians promise stuff they can never deliver. But we, the people, can control our financial well-being to some extent. We just have to be smart about it. And that's a memo.